Y'all ready? Y'all ready?
Fish Stripes Live coming to you on a Monday evening, the Monday following unfortunate a Dolphin loss and a Gator loss at the hands of the number one ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. Miami Hurricanes also lost this weekend. If there are any Florida State fans for some reason still watching these streams, they also lost this weekend. So it was a tough weekend for football in South Florida, and it was a tough weekend on the baseball diamond as well for the Marlins. They dropped two of three. They take one of two from the Pittsburgh Pirates, the lowly Pittsburgh Pirates, one of the only teams in Major League Baseball that is actually worse than your Miami Marlins. The Marlins dropped 5 of 7 to the Pirates this season after a 3 of 4 in Pittsburgh earlier, and they dropped 2 of 3 this weekend. Overall, pretty ugly series results-wise for the Marlins, but there was still a lot of good to be taken away from it. And Alex Carver, I'm going to start here with you. We finally saw good Edward Cabrera. And I want to talk to you about what your impressions were of good Edward Cabrera.
Yeah, that's Edward at his best. By the way, FAU did win this week, so shout out to my.
Oh, there you go.
Anyway.
We got one in.
Anyway, they played Fordham, so I guess it's to be expected. But anyways, to answer the question, really good. Definitely the best that you've seen him for sure. And it's just, I think I've said this a couple times. That's I think when he's at his ultimate best is when he's fastball slider and mixing in the other two pitches. So I thought really good. Velo was there. Stuff was good. A little wild at times, which I think is what he still needs to clean up. That has been a kind of crutch for him when he's been going bad. The few times he has in the minors, he can get wild, showing it a little here earlier in his major league career. But this is the time to fix it. We've said that multiple times as well. So yeah, really good. Definitely building block start. I said on the stream last week that, man, I don't know. I don't see any improvement. Well, here was the improvement. There's the start of it. So a little ways to go still. So definitely a good step.
Yeah, a lot of traffic for Edward, but only 3 runs allowed, but none of them were earned. So really some bad luck, and they actually had a scoring change into the fact that there were no earned runs in that start. But 7 Ks over 4 innings is really what you're looking for. You started seeing that swing and miss stuff from Edward, which we all know he has. But again, 5 hits, 3 walks, just a little too much traffic, and it ran him into trouble because he only got through 4 innings on 79 pitches. But Isaac, just a peek at what he can be, right? A little bit more of what we were expecting Edward to do when he came up here.
Yeah, no, and I think a great example of what shows what he can do is that first inning. I was covering the game on Saturday, and the first pitch he threw was a 98-mile-an-hour fastball to Brian Hayes. He absolutely barreled it 400 feet dead center. And after that, I wrote this in the article, that was probably the best inning of his major league career. He went on, he had a wild pitch, he had a pass ball by Nick Fortes. So there's a little, stuff there. But other than that, he struck out the side and really was dominating stuff. They weren't close in that inning. And then, like you said, the rest of the way, there's a lot of traffic, a little wildness, 3 walks, like you said, but it was the best strikeout game of his career. And he looked sharp at times. He wasn't dominant, but he was sharp, and he had the breaking balls working, and he looked really good.
Eli, your impressions of the 7 strikeouts in 4 inning ball from Edward Cabrera?
Well, more of the same from you guys. The one detail I'm stuck on is why it was only 4 innings, why it was only 79 pitches. So his pitch counts, his 5 starts into his career, 78 in his debut, then 53, 65, 75, 79. For a guy that they want to evaluate to be in the rotation, for a guy that has hit over 100 pitches right before he got called up, why he was removed in this game to make room for Sean Gunther, who I know Alex pointed out he had a great minor league season before he got called up, but we've seen a lot of Sean Gunther in the majors, and he's, just to be honest, he's not as high priority for this team than Edward. So I just don't – I understand in the previous start he had that issue with his toe that had to be lifted early, but for the most part, I just don't feel like we're learning much about him. I don't feel like he's learning as much as he could be if he was actually – staying in for this 3rd time through the order to get closer to 100 pitches, to get over 100 pitches, to make this more of a building block for next year, because they're being so conservative that now even going into next year, he's not fully stretched out to make it all the way through the season as a starter. So I'm kind of just stuck on that, honestly.
Kevin, one of the other big storylines this weekend was the Marlins call up these two young catchers. It seems that the Alex Jackson experiment is pretty much over. The Marlins have 4 catchers on their active roster right now. That's Jackson, Leon, and then the 2 young guys, Peyton Henry and Nick Fortes. You were excited about seeing Peyton Henry, and he played 1 game this weekend. Fortes played 1 game, and Alex Jackson started 1 game as well with Sandy, and we'll get to Sandy in a second. But just, overall first impressions, Fortes went deep this weekend.
So I was actually at the game to watch Fortes, so I could actually talk more about that one than Peyton Henry, which I guess I'll probably see for the first time tonight because I was not able to watch the other game. Fortes, he was good. I mean, he had the homer. He was pretty much the only guy who put up solid plate appearances for the Marlins that game. I mean, the Pirates somehow were able to really shut down the Marlins. The only issue I had with him were I think that may have been the most passed balls I've ever seen in a single baseball game, and wild pitches as well, because there were a couple of those for sure. But besides that, I really like what I saw from Fortes. I mean, he's not a guy who I really knew about until I saw him, and let's hope he keeps going because, I mean, he's been better than Alex Jackson in my opinion already. I mean, Alex Jackson is barely hit for this team, so I don't think it's the long-term solution, not even close. He's probably another one of those guys who they're probably just going to start calling up catchers like we saw Peyton Henry now. We saw Alex Jackson for next year to see who's probably the best backup, or somehow they don't go for Jacob Stallings or Wilson Contreras and they start one of these guys, which would not make any sense. But, I mean, I like what I saw. And Peyton Henry, I think he got a hit, so pretty solid there from him. Alex Jackson, I mean, I've liked him when he's catching Sandy. He almost got the note. Sandy, I think the 14 Ks, that was with him. And then the almost no-hitter was also with Alex Jackson. So maybe that's something to look forward to, keeping Alex Jackson to keep Sandy going.
Well, I think that's it, right? They're keeping Jackson around because he's built this great relationship with Sandy, and they're keeping Leon around because he's, really good with the young guys. And then they're keeping, Henry and Fortes around because they're now Rule 5 protected. You're not going to lose these guys in the Rule 5 draft. You got Peyton Henry for John Curtis, so that's certainly a guy you want to evaluate. And you do have to find a backup catcher for next year. And Alex, you've been following these guys a little more closely recently. Fortes is a guy you've been very high on this year. I remember when he got drafted, he had a great year, and then he really took a lot of, he moved up from AA to AAA to the majors this year, kind of out of nowhere. So, your impressions of what you saw this weekend, and then just also the year that Fortes has had.
Yeah, for sure. He's been really good this year in the upper minors. First taste was so bad. He's been good. And now to make it to pro ball is obviously huge. And it's just been all about the bat. The bat's just completely turned around. He was this light hitting guy. Looks like he's made adjustments. Looks like he's staying back. And you saw what he could do. I mean, he got his first hit and then he goes yard. So really good. Awesome to see out of him. You have to see it sustained. That's kind of been his issue this year because he's had his moments where he's been good and then he's kind of gone, 0 for something again, 0 for 20, 0 for 30, then come back a little bit, gone back. So, I mean, I guess that's the life of a catcher offensively. But, man, if he could continue to hit like he showed last night, that's huge because the Marlins, as we know, they're going to be in the market for a catcher. I think they should be. But I think both of these guys, more so Fortes, I think could be a very, very good backup catcher for the Marlins. I think Henry, on the other hand, that's an interesting guy, and I have this out. I'm writing about him currently. I'll probably put it out tomorrow morning. I don't want to put it out too late tonight, but I'll probably put it out tomorrow morning, that he grew up in a family that's all about wrestling. I read a Fangraphs article on that his family was a bunch of wrestlers, and then he came along and didn't really want to do the wrestling thing, so he wanted to play baseball. So he's really had to transform his body physically into that and really learn how to become agile. I think that's probably his biggest thing is blocking pitches. I don't think he's good at that. I think that could get him moved to a different position, maybe DH, maybe first base. But Fortes, I saw him growing up with Jupiter, and pitchers rave about how he handles pitching. The arm is his question mark defensively. It's not fantastic in terms of the numbers. But, man, he calls games good. He blocks pitches. And if he's hitting, he could be a really good backup catcher. So I like Fortes. Henry, I like too. Really, really good power. He's got 60 grade raw power. But I think he could move to a different position if he remains with the Marlins long term.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about backup catchers, and there's nothing like a backup catcher that's light hitting, but he can give you maybe, 7 home runs or something off the bench a year and play good defense when he needs to spell a guy. And hopefully, obviously, I think a lot of people want the Marlins to go out and get that premier catcher, and then one of these guys turns into the backup. But it seems like they're starting to turn these backup options into more quality players. All accounts say that Alfaro's gone next year, and I think Leon is a free agent, and I just don't see a place for him on this team, even though he's been good with the young guys. So I think they would like to go young at that position and then obviously make the big upgrade. And it seems like one of these guys is going to be in play for the starting catcher role. But I mean, again, I want to talk about another storyline of the weekend. It was Sandy Alcantara once again. Isaac just doing his thing.
Yeah, Sandy. It's funny. His start. He went 6 innings. This was considered a bad start with Sandy Stephens in his last 8 starts. In his last 8 starts, actually, since Colorado, is a 1.54 ERA in 58 innings pitched. He struck out 68 guys in those 58 innings pitched, and he's only walked 8 people. So he has just been phenomenal. And so, yeah, he had a great start on Sunday, yesterday. And it was considered a mediocre start by his standards. So you just like to see it going. I honestly see no reason to keep throwing him out there every 5th day. I mean, let him get to 200 innings, and then after that, I would just say call it a year, man. This guy's been a workhorse the last 3 years, other than last year's 60 games. But close to 200 innings in 2019. He's going to do 200 innings this year. So he must be getting a little tired, I assume.
He needs 5 1/3 in his next start to get to 200 innings. He's at 194 2/3 right now. He went 6 innings, 6 hits, 2 runs. Only one of them earned 1 walk, 4 Ks. And this is something I've talked about with Sandy. He just gets it done in so many ways. He's got the 12 and the 13 and the 14 strikeouts in the last month or so, and then he goes out with this 4 strikeout performance with some 6 hits and a walk, and still is able to keep it to 2 runs, and the Marlins end up winning this game on a Brian De La Cruz home run. And obviously we keep talking about him because there's only so many things to talk about at this point in September, but I just want to go quickly over this, and then it's Alex's showtime because we're going to do a little bit of a minor league recap today. But Eli, you put a Brian De La Cruz article out today. So I'm curious, just talk to us about it. Talk to us about what the argument was, and just give some people, plug yourself. Give yourself a shameless plug right here.
I hope this works and it lets me make myself big. Yeah.
There you go.
And there he is, my man, Brian De La Cruz, who I think we all know the story, kind of like what he's doing right now. And I have the highlights for him, don't I? Of course I do. No, I don't. I only had the Lewin home run highlights. So I don't even have the highlights loaded up. But yeah, entering play right now, obviously, if he had enough playing time to qualify, he would lead the majors in batting average, higher than anybody else. And he's doing it mostly by putting balls in play like he did on Sunday, obviously, down to their final strike. He's the one guy on this team that you want up when you need a hit, when you have the potential tying run on third and you need to push him across. You call on Brian De La Cruz, and he lined it right up the middle. And digging into it, I was just trying to find the balance between how hot he is right now and, where the reality is, because we all know that he's going to come back down to earth, that he's not going to be the very best hitter in baseball. But, where that reality lies with him, that's a big question right now. And what I found is it's a lot of encouraging stuff. He does a lot of little things well. If you dig into his minor league stats, he's had these high BABIPs year after year after year after at every level, while he's been young for those levels. So that aspect of the game, I think it is going to translate moving forward, that he's always going to overachieve a little bit. He really knows how to find those pockets in the defense, not only by, hitting it past fielders, but also by, elevating it over certain people as well. So there are little things that he does well, but the bottom line is the one thing that's most incredible about him, but that's also really, not going to hold up, is that when he hits balls on the ground, everything is getting through. His batting average on ground balls is 460. When he hits a ball on the ground, which is supposed to be the most routine thing at the major league level, everybody can field ground balls. Those are the things that in this new age of baseball, everybody's been told to avoid. The rest of the league hits 200 when they hit ground balls, and he hits 460. Nobody else in baseball is hitting even 400 on ground balls. It's him, it's De La Cruz, then this, number 2, that's Trout, and then nobody else is on the screen. It's that big of a drop-off between him and everybody else on the batting average he's getting on ground balls. So that won't keep up with him. But all that being said, a lot of people like player comps, and the more I thought about it, I really think there are some similarities with a Ramon Liriano. When you talk about the all-around game, I don't think the power is ever going to be there quite the same as it was with Liriano. So I think it's kind of a fusion of him and maybe a little bit of Odubel Herrera. And so both these guys are kind of awkward to mention because Liriano got suspended for steroids and Odubel Herrera got suspended for domestic violence. So off the field, you're looking for something else. But on the field, I don't think that's even like that crazy of an outcome for him to potentially to peak as that really solid above average outfielder, and potentially even a little bit more if he puts on a little bit more strength. And at the very least, he's going to have a nice opportunity entering the start of next year for sure, because they have some holes in this outfield aside from him and aside from Jesus Sanchez.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, Eli, and for a minimum of 100 plate appearances, De La Cruz has the 4th highest BABIP in all of Major League Baseball. And above him is Mike Trout, J.D. Davis, and Luis Robert. And then it is Luis Robert. I always think it's Robert, but it's Luis Robert. And then right after him is our good friend Brendan Marsh, Jake Myers from the Astros, Brandon Nimmo, Tyler Wade. Garrett Cooper is 9th, and Tyler O'Neill rounds out the top 10. And then an old friend of ours, Starling Marte, is 11th. So I'm kind of looking at this, and I'm saying, like, yes, he's not going to hit 329, right? And he does have one of the lowest strikeout rates of this top 10. He's only striking out at 24%. He's walking at an 8.2% clip. So these are good plate discipline numbers, and he obviously sees the ball well, and his K rate has steadily decreased, has only gotten better as the numbers have kind of come down. And obviously the BABIP has come down to earth a little bit. It was over 500 at one point. Trout is first at 456. It's only going to keep going down. He's hitting 329 right now with a 386 on base and 484 slugging, 138 weighted runs created plus. The guy, I keep saying, like, the guy just hits, and at some point he is just maybe going to tell everybody, fuck you, I'm a starting outfielder. But again, I just keep going back to this notion of if the Marlins, go out and get 2 outfielders and they obviously they want to get the center fielder, the premier center fielder, big upgrade in center field. Everybody wants them to get that, and I think they will. And then you sign a corner outfielder and you go into spring training and you say, go win the job. So one of you go win the job, and it's him and, somebody in Brian De La Cruz. And if Brian De La Cruz wins the job, then I think you're looking at a player that, can obviously be really solid because he just does what he does. But at the same time, if he's your 4th outfielder, if he doesn't win the job, then you're doing damn well. And I can keep saying it as much as I want, and I think we've said it a lot on this show, and we're going to keep talking about him because he is the storyline right now with how great he's been. But man, I don't know how I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. There's 2 weeks left in the season. There's 13 games left in the season, and he's hitting 329. And it's just like we've been waiting for him to, fall off and be a 280 hitter.
We're going to have just a very long offseason of staring at the stats, and they're going to be like crazy good. And even if you don't believe that's his true talent, it's going to be a very long time before those actually come back down to earth a little bit. I mentioned this in our Fish Stripes group chat. I think I mentioned it yesterday. I think the dream is that you go out and you really do make that big center field acquisition, whether it's trading for Brian Reynolds or miraculously maybe bringing back Starling Marte or just something like that. They need to do something very big to bring in a clear top dog that has a lengthy major league track record. And then I'd love to see, another signing of a guy that is perhaps past his prime or at the tail ends that you could get on a 1 or 2 year deal, like a Tommy Pham or a Mark Canha, something like that. So you put yourself in a situation where you these like 4 guys, 2 new guys, along with Jesus Sanchez and Brian De La Cruz, and you still have all these great options internally in the high minors that we think at least one of those guys are going to pan out, and they're going to have their opportunities to break through over the course of a long season. Eventually, it doesn't take that much. They're going to have to trade some of their prospect depth, and they're going to have to spend some money. They can really make a big jump by doing something.
I think I'm just going to do some speculation here because it's September and because we're on the subject, and just throw a name out there for you guys. Isaac, thoughts on Eddie Rosario? This is a guy I was thinking about the Marlins signing. this past off season. He goes to Cleveland on a $8 million deal or something like that, and now he's on the Braves. He hits for the cycle. He hits for the cycle right this week. Just curious on what you think about a guy that bring him in, and I think it's a righty lefty split between him and De La Cruz, and you say, okay, one of you figure out, you guys battle it out, and whoever comes out on top is the starting left fielder, I would say, because center field and then right field Sanchez.
Yeah, I don't think it would be a bad idea. I hadn't seen much of him play this year until he got traded to the Braves, and since he's been with the Braves, he's been phenomenal. I think his OPS is over 1,000 or something like that. But he's got power. We've seen that when he was with Minnesota. And he's a lefty bat that can really, hit the ball out in that right porch in Lone Depot Park. So I think, him and maybe a De La Cruz platoon would be, formidable, honestly. And with Jesus, or you could go with a Jesus Sanchez, Brian De La Cruz platoon. But I think they want to see Jesus play every day. Kim Mang spoke very highly of the guy. And I think Sanchez's numbers speak for themselves that he should be a starter. But yeah, Rosario is definitely an option where I can realistically see them bringing in for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at Rosario now, and you're right. His OPS since joining the Braves is 1.115, 182 runs created plus. Been one of the best hitters in baseball since then, in 5 home runs as well. And obviously a huge part of the fact that the Braves are, one game. I think they're 1 game up, right, on the Phillies right now as this National League East Titans. But one guy I've thought about, when we had Mish on and he talked about Minnesota as a trade partner, is Max Kepler. Alex, what would your thoughts be on Max Kepler possibly as an option for that left field spot?
I think I agree with Eli more in terms of the internal options that you have. Man, I know we're probably going to talk about it, but I want to see Peyton Burdick and see if he can get a shot, man, because I think he's ready. But I think it's more likely like those older type guys. I think they're looking for a bit bigger bang for their buck. I think in a trade they're going to want that franchise cornerstone type outfielder in terms of center field. If you want to talk about maybe a lesser trade, I guess Kepler could be an option, but I think they're really going to, if they're going to really pull the trigger on a big trade, they're going to do the one big trade, and then I think they would figure it out, internally, unless they want to move more. Eater getting hurt kind of puts a wrench in that as well. That's another piece that you don't have to trade. Got to go to younger guys. I don't know if they'll want to do that. So, in terms of trades, if you can get something like that done for Kepler, for Twins would probably want close to major league ready prospects. After the center field trade, you got to look at it and say, do they want to really deal more out of the prospect depth? And it'll get harder to pull prospects from the Marlins after they make the big center field trade, I think. So I don't know. I think he would be a guy that could make sense for sure, but I don't know if it would happen. I think it's more likely what Eli said. Those guys, those older guys, those career reclamation projects that the Marlins are historically known for. I think Mark Canha is a good one. We've talked about that name before with the Marlins. So
I love
think
that
that's
name.
a good name to keep an eye on. But yeah, I think it would make sense. I just don't know if it would happen, honestly, in a trade like that.
Eli threw out Tommy Pham, and I really liked that name as well when he would discuss it with us the other night. Kevin, I'm curious. One thing we didn't talk about is this weekend, Brian Reynolds comes to town. You were there. You saw him up close and personal. This is a guy that you've been clamoring for. We've all been clamoring for on here. Just your impressions of him as a hitter from seeing him, in person.
I mean, he didn't do much that game, but I mean, he's been solid throughout the whole year. He's an all-star, and that's something that we don't see much in Pittsburgh. At least this year we saw, who was it? It was Adam Frazier and Brian Reynolds both made the all-star team. Jacob Stallings possibly maybe win a gold glove. I mean, some good things, and both Stallings and Reynolds look good in Marlins Park. So, I mean, that's the best part of it. And now it's just what would he give up? And you guys were mentioning Minnesota. Minnesota's Mitch Garver, and I think I've always been a guy who maybe the first time around came on this season, I mentioned Mitch Garver, and I think he liked that idea. Miami wouldn't have to give up a Max Meyer to get Kepler and Mitch Garver on the Marlins, I would say. Now, if it's Reynolds and Stallings, you might have to give up Max Meyer, but you could give up, as Alex mentioned, close to major league ready guys. And I don't know who exactly would be those guys, but I know you would have to include possibly a McCambly or a Nicholas in there in that kind of a trade. I like the idea of Minnesota. Eliezer would be in that trade too. And Brian Reynolds again. I mean, this guy's he's proven in the league. That's the best part about it. He's a guy who's seen in center field. He's good defensively. He could bat the hell out of that ball. So that's the best part of it. And then if you do get Stallings as well, you have a catcher who's proven, and you don't have to be rotating a catcher every other day like they've been doing these past couple of days with Henry, Fortes now in the lineup, and who's the other guy? Alex Jackson. So it's just a sigh of relief. And also, is Jorge Alfaro done for the season?
We got an update on him today, and while I'm at it, I might as well update the injuries today. Daniel Alvarez, friend of the show, this is from him. Pablo Lopez is going to throw a bullpen session tomorrow, so I think the Marlins are trying to work him back just to get him some innings at the end of the year. I don't think it'll be out of a starter role because he's not going to have enough time to do a full starter's rehab stint. Jacksonville's season is almost over. So he's not going to be able to throw, and all the rest of the minor league seasons are over. I think they would just throw him back into the bullpen just to get him, 2 or 3, work him up kind of. Jesus Aguilar and Jorge Alfaro are not doing baseball activities. I think it's pretty clear the Marlins, even if Aguilar could play this year, I think they're going to just give him the rest of the year because Lewin is hitting so well and has been great, and they want to give him every day at bats. And then Alfaro, he's been banged up all year. It's been a really rough year for him. And then the other news that came out today is that Miguel Rojas is day-to-day with a contusion on his left knee. So that could pose interesting. If he gets his 500 plate appearances, thank God, which activated his vesting option. So congratulations, Miguel Rojas, on that. That was something that I was looking for this weekend. It happened. He got to 500 plate appearances. So the Marlins have him under contract for 2022, as we all expected they would. El Capitan will return. But if he goes on the IL, there's a spot available at shortstop for a certain Mr. Somebody out there, and Isan Diaz is not blocking that spot anymore. So it would be certainly interesting to see if the Marlins, now that they send Isan down, I mean, a September demotion is as deflating as it gets, and it's as much of a ultimatum as it gets. If you get sent down in September when they're usually trying guys out, I mean, that's pretty much an ultimatum there. So in terms of that, it does, Alfaro, I mean, look, there are 13 games left. I don't know how much we're going to see from Alfaro again, from Aguilar again, but it's been good to see Lewin, and he hits this walk-off homer, and Isaac just, keeps on hitting, and you're I'm really starting to think, like, I've been really high on this guy, and I was getting a little worried there, but all of a sudden you're looking at it and you're like, okay, this kid's gonna be pretty good.
Yeah, no, when you guys mentioned to me the give him the keys for first base, at the time I was like, not yet. He had one good game in Washington at that point, so I was like, all right, let's hold on a little bit. But since he's been up and playing every single day, he's hitting 265, getting on base at 302, and slugging 585. That's good for his 888 OPS. He's only struck out 11 times in 41 at-bats. It's not great, but it's not bad at all. The guy's putting the ball in play. He's hitting the ball in the air, and he's hitting it for power. So the guy's, since he's been playing every single day, he's been great. So, and basically what you would expect, the expectations were for him is what he's done so far in his everyday role. So I think he needs to play every single of the next 13 games that they have left. And maybe, I think they would be very comfortable just on the defense alone, because his defense is Gold Glove caliber. So him at first base, Aguilar at DH, I guess that would leave Cooper as the odd man out. I think Craig Mish was the one who said the other day that Cooper would probably have more value than Aguilar, just based on the fact that any AL team should want him. So it wouldn't be bad having Lewin in the 6-7 hole for next year, starting on opening day with his defense at first base.
Yeah, and again, I think it's just making me feel a little better about this team's offense, offensive potential in 2022. Yeah. I think Lewin's floor, like you mentioned with that defense, is just so high because it's Gold Glove caliber over there. It's Anthony Rizzo, it's Freddie Freeman over there. I wasn't watching a lot of the games this weekend, I'll be honest, but heard about great plays being made all over the place by Lewin, and obviously he has this walk-off home run, which is kind of his moment so far. It might have been that home run at Wrigley earlier, but now all of a sudden he's got this big home run, this walk-off home run, and it's getting a little fun in September. Obviously they've been playing better baseball. The results have been better. And when you have Jazz, Jesus, Lewin out there, and this pitching staff out there, you start to get a clearer picture of, 2022 with this pitching staff, with a couple improvements. Alex Carver, you're starting to feel a little bit better with these three guys playing well, right?
Yeah, for sure. Jesus and Lewin, we've talked about them many times since they've been playing regularly here. Lewin, to see him going to all fields is spectacular. Jesus, the same thing. I mean, yeah, it's incredible, man. Jazz, I think, needs to clean up the defense for sure. Mm-hmm. he just tries to do way too much at times. We saw it in that error in the outfield. I mean, you got to give way, like he just stop trying to do too much. But I think he'll learn that as his career gets a little older, right? So yeah, I mean, it's great to see them starting to really find it at this point in this season, and then go into next season, and it's all gas, no brakes. So really good. I like what I've seen from all three of those guys, and I think it's nowhere to go but up for all three of them.
Yeah, I kind of think Jazz, I'm seeing a little fatigue at the end of the season here. And this is something that Donnie said a couple weeks ago to me when I asked him about Jazz, is he doesn't want to see him kind of tail off. He wants to see him finish strong, be a guy that stays focused to the end of the year. And obviously it's been a frustrating year for Jazz. It's been a frustrating year for the whole team, and he's young and exciting. And, but I would really like to see him have a good last couple weeks and bring it home nicely here, because the OPS is slipping a little bit. It's down into like the 730s, not nearly, not near 750. It doesn't look like he's going to get to 2020. He's probably going to come up just short, but just to see him finish on like a nice 2-week stretch would be really positive. But, I think we've obviously all seen enough flashes from Jazz to kind of say, okay, this guy, the potential is obviously there. And for me, it's all about consistency. And Donnie over the year has been talking about consistency all year. And I was kind of like, every time I was asking about Jazz, I was getting the same consistency answer. I was like, all right, Donnie, stop giving me so much coach talk. But then you look into it and you're like, wow, that's really all you want to see from Jazz, because he's got these great stretches where he's putting up 900 OPSs, and then he's got these tough stretches where he's just not getting on base a ton, and maybe not striking out as much, but there are just nights where he just kind of looks lost at the plate, just doesn't look very focused, and we know how well he sees the ball, so it's uncharacteristic, and seeing a little more of those recently. So would kind of like to see him get back on track, finish the year out nice. But Alex, speaking of finishes, let's jump into it. Minor League Baseball is wrapping up. You had low A, high A. Well, the FCL, low A, high A, and double A have all concluded their seasons. The Dominican Summer League and the and triple A, Jacksonville, I think they have another week or two, right? They got another week or two. So obviously, I think we can start with JJ Bleday has a disappointing year, right? And there were some other disappointing years around the board. But when you just kind of take a look at it overall, I think we're all everybody is going to talk about the pitching, right? But a disappointing season from the hitters? Are you starting to see some, hitting potential in the system?
For sure. I mean, the draft was fantastic again, as you guys saw. Watson, I'm pretty sure he got hurt at the end of the year, but he started great. I've really, really liked Bennett Hostetler. He's hit and went to Jupiter, did amazing. Then he went to Beloit, kept hitting. So, I mean, the draft was huge. Great. Bleday, yes, definitely struggled this year. It's concerning for sure. If you want to talk about some of the other standouts, Cam Meisner, incredible, started slow and then just man, ridiculously good. He's probably, I mean, if it doesn't go to Troy Johnson, which I think it should, he's in the conversation for minor league player of the year with Cam Meisner, because he's just been ridiculous. He's been good on defense, played all three spots, and then hitting speaks for itself. So there's definitely a lot of guys. I can mention more, but there's a lot of guys that you look at what they've done offensively and you say, okay, this isn't the issue that I think the issue of the Marlins can't coach hitting is a little overblown. It is a little concerning when you see a guy like JJ Bleday, and he's obviously with the missed season, but everybody missed 2020, so you can't really blame that, right? So yeah, to see Burdick surpass him, to see Meisner, I think, starting to surpass him, it's a little concerning on him alone for sure. But there's so many other guys in this system that have done so well. Connor Scott's another guy. He's kind of struggled a little bit, but he has missed a lot of time with injuries. So I don't think I'm out on him yet. Victor Mesa, I know you don't want to talk about him, but he had his struggles.
He had a great finish.
Yeah,
he's great finish, undeniable.
He did amazing. So, I mean, I think he comes back to double A. I think he should have been back with double A before now, but no room. I think you could have moved Burdick to triple A and put him back in double A. But again, I'm not the roster management expert. So, yeah, I mean, I think overall it's good. Not great, but very, very good on the hitting side of things. And then pitching speaks for itself. So I'm optimistic about everything that I saw in the minors from the hitters this year, man, despite a couple struggles.
Eli, two things I want to ask you about. And the first one is, while we're talking about Bleday, just him. all it takes is one good year to get to just, he can start in AA or in AAA next year, and he has a great year, and all of a sudden people are back in on him, right?
Yeah, but we spoke to JJ Cooper about this in Baseball America. They were kind of out in front with saying, "Oh, this guy is not quite who we thought we thought he was coming out of school." And with JJ, like his rationalization was not so. He didn't really go a whole lot into Bladay's production, but he also mentioned, which I think is a little unfair, is that he's just surrounded by a really deep, amazing draft class in 2019. If you look at the top of the first round of the 2019 draft class, let me see if I could pull up these names.
Riley Green,
Andrew Vaughn.
Vaughn.
Yeah, Andrew Vaughn, who's in the big leagues.
Alec
Manoah, who was a couple picks later, and he's already a stud in the major leagues. Like, there's so much success at the top of that draft. Adley Rushman is now in Bobby Witt Jr. Both of those guys have been amazing ever since they entered pro ball. So he's kind of like by association gotten unfortunately screwed over there. Just from watching him a lot, it's a little bit of a balance of a little bit of bad luck, but also just generally not making as much like strong contact as we thought he would, just not barreling the ball as much as he's supposed to, that you would expect him to, fouling off a lot of pitches that are very hittable and just getting himself in counts where he's not getting those balls that he could do damage against. Any way you slice it, a pretty disappointing year. At the end, he got it kind of close to being a league average hitter if you go by WRC plus
97.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not as enthused about the offensive side as Alex is. In some bits and pieces, I like Burdick a lot, and I like Meisner a lot with those guys. There are a lot of questions with what this infield is going to look like, the pipeline for that, knowing that Jose Devers unfortunately missed so much of this year due to injury. I'm still a little skeptical about Nasim Nunez's bat and exactly what is there, whether it's just him drawing walks or whether he could actually do much once he faces pitchers that actually are locating their stuff correctly. And we saw, just watching these affiliates for most of the year at Beloit and at Pensacola, the infielders on both of those teams, through much of the year, they're just like organizational depth types. Like there's kind of that missing piece of this farm system, and maybe someone like Hostetler proves to be a gem, and he like surges all the way through the farm system, and he's a guy that could play a couple infield spots. Cody Morissette coming out of the draft, it's kind of a small sample, but he did not do much at all, and neither did Tanner Allen. So yeah, I'm kind of mixed. For people who care about this thing, like at the end of the day, their minor league affiliates, their record was slightly above 500 overall. I don't know how many people care about that, but now that it's in the book, they finished like 13 games over 500 as a total. So the performance was fine, but I mean, that's not reflective of an elite farm system. Like I enter this offseason with questions about exactly where they are in terms of how they compare to the best farm systems in baseball.
Well, I saw this today. The Rays are going to go 5 for 5 at their levels. All 5 of their affiliates are going to win their division. So obviously a lot of people don't really care about minor league results. But at the end of the day, if you have the best minor league teams, if all of your affiliates are winning a lot of ball games, that probably means you have a really good farm system. That's just how it is. It's kind of like if you're winning preseason games in the NFL, that probably means your depth is pretty good. So it's just how it is. And the Rays, like, that's incredible. Going 5 for 5, winning your league is outrageous, and it just doesn't really happen that it doesn't happen that often. And obviously, there were a lot of disappointments this year. For anybody that cares, that was focused on this, Griffin Conine was obviously in contention for the MILB home run lead, but 2 of the Blue Wahoo's last series, I think like 2 of the last 3 to end the season got canceled because of COVID. So the Wahoos missed like 12 games in there, where Conine could have made up for the lead. And whoever it is, MJ Melendez, I think, is still playing. So he's going to soar past him. He's got 38, and I think Conine finished with 34 or 35?
36
36, which is outrageous. And go ahead, Eli.
It's just, of course, it's like out of his control. You don't want to you don't want to treat the pandemic as just this distraction, but it is kind of unprecedented to lose like 2 weeks of your season and not make it up. The fact that those games were canceled and won't be made up, and that this Pensacola team wasn't quite good enough to make the playoffs. So it's some unfortunate luck for him. At the same time, with Conine, his performance did slip.
Big time
heading into that final series as well. Because they have an option to boost these guys up to AAA and finish out their season there. And Conine's not a candidate for that. Maybe Burdick is. I'm really looking forward to seeing. They hopefully do that over like the next 24 hours if they send Burdick up.
Or Blade.
But someone like Conine the strikeout issue was even worse than it had been previously, where it shows that he's kind of at the right level to continue his development. But with AAA, that's the one thing I guess I'll be paying attention to is hopefully with some of these guys at AA, they give them a little bit extra push up so that they can, finish things off on a fun note.
And I've seen people out there saying that the Marlins should have just sent Blade to AAA because he's got the mechanics and the approach, and maybe he just needs to see some easier pitching just to kind of get a confidence boost, because obviously AA is where the elite pitching is at. So I think it would be interesting to see if they send Blade and Burdick up to AAA. You want to talk about Meisner? I mean, how about a great finish to the year? He played 14 games in Pensacola, and he obviously should have played more. 145 weighted runs created plus and hit 309, 27.4 strikeout rate, 11.3 walk rate, 878 OPS. I mean, the guy was really freaking good in AA, and he only hit 1 home run, but he was really good in high A at the end of the year as well. Blade, you give him 10 more games and maybe he gets up to 100 weighted runs created plus and gets that. At least you can look at him and say, wow, even despite all the struggles, he had a league average year, and he still almost did, surprisingly. I was shocked when I kind of tuned out of Pensacola for a week or so, and he apparently went off that week and got himself back up, over 210 to finish the year and up near 700 OPS, which is kind of what I was looking for him. But, Isaac, Eli mentioned the infield problems, and I'm kind of looking at this organization and I'm looking down towards the lower levels. And, Eli mentioned and Alex mentioned Bennett Hostetler, but I'm also looking at Jose Salas and Khalil Watson and Yidi Capet in the DSL as well. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, there's a second wave of talent yet to be uncovered in this organization that's 2 or 3 years behind the one that, we're really focused on. And Salas gets up to low A, and all things considered wasn't that terrible. So just your thoughts on the lower end of the system and the infield talent there.
Yeah, well, one thing I want to mention on Pensacola, it's definitely got to be really disappointing. On paper, not make the playoffs at the beginning of the year, we would have thought no way. That team was loaded, pitching and hitting. It is a little disappointing because, like you said, if it's a good farm system, the best team, which was Pensacola, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to be way over 500. But they weren't. And regarding the infield, I think once Jazz, came up and Isan Diaz came up, those are the 2 closest to the big league's main prospects in the infield. I would assume, and Lewin Diaz obviously coming up as well. But yeah, the big middle infield guys, I'll even add Nasim Nunez to that list. Those guys, they have high ceilings, obviously not as high floors, but Jose Salas I think is going to be a stud, and they have this draft class. They did focus a little bit on infielders, but yeah, we'll have to see what they do in the offseason, because in the high levels in the minors, AA and AAA, they're really lacking some serious, offensive impactful guys in the infield. Right? Joe Dunan was supposed to be maybe a guy that would play well, but he really struggled since coming back. And, Justin Twine is Justin Twine, and there's just really not much else in the infield in the high levels. So it really is all in the low levels for the infield.
Jupiter had a rough year, and that's a tough league, and that's a really young team. So, the guys I was focused on that team were Salas towards the end of the year, Nasim Nunez, and Victor Mesa Jr. Victor Mesa Jr. is 12 days into his 20s. Nasim Nunez is 21. Salas is 18. So you're looking at really young guys there. And Nasim, his plate discipline numbers are great. He walks at a very high clip, over 15%, strikes out right around 20%. But it's all going to be about impacting the baseball for him. And actually, he played 52 games this year and had 33 stolen bases. So if he's on base, he's such a threat with the wheels that he's got to find a way to impact the baseball, to get on base more, get extra base hits so that he can use his speed to get runs. Victor Mesa Jr. actually quietly had a pretty good year at 20 years, at 19 for most of the season. 718 OPS and 93 weighted runs created plus in the Florida State League, and I will always call it the Florida State League. That's really impressive. That's not a hitter-friendly league at all. It never has been. So you got to take these kind of numbers and look at it with the Florida State League context. And so Salas is like, he obviously tore up the FCL, and then a 648 OPS at 18 years old and 85 weighted runs created plus really isn't that terrible. In however many games he played, he didn't play that many. He played 27 games there. So pretty good, honestly. My fair assessment of like the younger levels. Looking forward to seeing those guys next year and seeing them start to try and move up towards the higher levels. Jupiter into Beloit. But one of the guys that dominated the lower levels, Eli, is a guy I wanted to ask you about today. He finally cracks Baseball America's top 100.
Yeah.
Yuri Perez. Is he he flew under the radar all year, and then recently, except for us, the guys that are really tapped into it, but for a lot of the Marlins fans that kind of cover they kind of keep an eye on the minor leagues. They know about Burdick and Blade and the big names and stuff. But Perez is shooting up boards all over the place. And Eli and Alex, I'll ask you about this. Just the year he had, all of a sudden, is he possibly right up with Max Meyer as like the most exciting pitching prospect in this organization right now?
I have him in the same tier as Meyer in terms of my prospect rankings. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he has a better career than Max Meyer. He kind of is in that category where he does so many things well, and he does it in this package that we like rarely see for someone that is 6'8" and has like made these improvements. I mean, aside from his very last start of the season, I guess was one of his worst, where he allowed 4 runs. And you look at most of his starts combined, and everything was like every time out, he was an automatic 5 innings, and it was either 0 runs or 1 run. He was so consistently awesome for so much of the year while being 4 years younger than his competition.
It's insane. He's 18 years old.
It's something, there's just not much precedent for a guy being 18 and pitching at this level of competition and performing at this level of excellence. It is amazing for a guy that not that long ago, like we said, they gave him, what's his signing bonus? It was like $200,000, something like that, where he was not even one of the top 4 or 5 guys in that class that he signed in a couple of years ago. And to make this progress it's amazing, and it's something that we're not that used to before. One thing I wanted to go back to, you mentioned with the infielders, like briefly touch on Yuri Perez, and it was a guy we were looking at really closely entering this year, and we didn't learn much because he spent all year in the DR, which is still finishing up. He did fine over there, but it was a little like eyebrow raising because he's now 20 years old, and usually if you're 20 and they have that much money invested in you, they bring you stateside. And I was listening to the podcast from Fangraphs. The name is escaping me right now. That's hosted by Kevin Goldstein, but he has a lot of experience internationally. And I don't have this confirmed, but it seems like the reason why he didn't come over to the US is all about his money, where if he stays in the DR, like for this entire first year, his signing bonus is all tax-free. Like he can actually like hide all that money from being collected from the US. And that probably saved him over $1 million. And that's something that, according to Kevin Goldstein, former Astros executive, that's something that a lot of these Cuban players especially have like negotiated into their deals, is to avoid U.S. taxes. And it's not the best step for his development. The fact that he's going to be 20 years old and hasn't played in the U.S.
He's only 19, Eli.
I think he just turned 20.
No, he's 19 in 3 days. He just turned 19.
Maybe I had that 1 year off then. It's still... It was a little bit unusual.
I mean, Salas is 18 and he's stateside. So it is unusual that.
Yeah, you got it right. I had 1 year off, and yet still, I think that may have played a part in it, especially when he was hitting so well early in the season and didn't come over. So with him, he's still a big question mark. But that just kind of like addresses one question that I had about why they hadn't considered him for just to play some complex league games or something.
His numbers actually ticked up really nicely at the end of the year, kind of 697 OPS, 94 weighted runs created plus. He was down below the Mendoza line after a hot start. He really kind of fell off. But Alex, again, I want to talk to you about Yuri Perez, man. I mean, when does the national recognition start? Does it start now?
I mean, if you go by Baseball America, then it's starting now. Yeah. So, I mean, that's good to see. really cool. I mean, the kid deserves it. Daniel's been talking about him all year. He mentioned him to me when we were watching his videos on his Instagram in spring training, and he was like, "Look at this kid. I'm really excited." And I looked at it. I was like, "Okay, we can only go by what we see." So I thought he had a little bit to clean up in terms of repetition. But Eli said this is a really big kid. He's starting to figure out his body. Looks like he's figured it out perfectly. The things that I saw that I thought he had to clean up that I've mentioned to you guys before in terms of repetition, the last couple times I saw him, it was gone. So it's a guy that's figuring it out really quickly as an 18-year-old kid. And Eli said, man, I don't think I've ever seen a kid at 18 years old pitch this way at this level of competition this quickly. So it's definitely exciting. Yeah. It's unprecedented for sure. Really exciting.
It's crazy when you see an 18-year-old playing in low A, like Jose Salas, and playing well on the on the hitting side, and then you get to the pitching side, and there's an 18-year-old, and he's also 6'8", and he makes it all the way to high A, and he's got a 2.86 ERA in high A and 10.64 Ks per nine. A little bit concerning is that he had a 5.32 FIP in high A. But at the end of the day, he's going to be 19 next year, so he's probably going to be even more competitive against that level next year, and he's only going to get better in the offseason. He spent the majority of the season. He had 15 starts at Jupiter. He had a 1.61 ERA and 13.18 Ks per nine. And a 2.73 FIP there. So this guy's tremendous, and throwing high 90s, big breaking stuff. Just another one of these gems that the Marlins have pulled out of their ass, seemingly, on the pitching side. But a lot of minor league coverage to come. I can't even say that we have 9 minutes left, so we can't really or 7 minutes left, actually, so we can't really get into too much more in the minor leagues. But there is so much to go into in terms of, we barely touched on Meisner. We barely touched on Burdick, Meyer. Eater had a great year. Obviously, he's going down with Tommy John surgery, though, and some of the pitchers on down the line and some of the hitters on down the line. Sure, we'll do some coverage of that in the coming days and weeks. Obviously, AAA Jacksonville still has to wrap up, and so I definitely will be keeping an eye to see if Blade or Burdick make it up there. But all eyes now turn towards another series between the Marlins and Nationals, two of the worst teams in the league and the two worst teams in the National League East. The Marlins have a 2-game lead on the Nationals for fourth place in the National League East. I'm trying to make it a thing. I don't want to see the Marlins finish in last place. I think it would be a nice confidence boost for this organization. Obviously, some things had to happen. They had to have some luck where the Nationals decided to blow things up 2 years after a World Series win. But still, it would be nice to see them finish out of the cellar. Pitching matchups again with the Rogers. I think we just got this one in Washington. And then Luzardo and Fetty tonight, Eliezer Hernandez, and that's not John Gray, Josiah Gray. Sorry, he was acquired in the Scherzer trade. Yep, with the Dodgers. So Kevin, I'm sorry I kind of left you out there during the minor league, but I know you love prediction time. So lead us off in prediction time, buddy. What do you got?
They're gonna lose tonight because it's Fede. This guy, he's been the number one Marlins killer this year. Tomorrow, I think they'll win, and I think they'll take 2 out of 3. Eliezer, I think, is going to have a good start. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it's Washington. Let's stay out of the cellar. I don't really know what else we could say about Washington. It's going to be another uneventful series. I think the most eventful one we're going to see is probably the next one, which is the Tampa Bay Rays, which we'll see some good talent in that next one. It won't be another bad team like the Nationals. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Isaac, your prediction for this series?
I'll say we lose 2 out of 3. Maybe Josiah Gray's a stud, man. His last start, I covered that game also. That kid has impressive breaking stuff. I'm really excited to see him again. And honestly, it's getting exciting just because, Lewin is performing, Jesus is performing, Jazz is performing. Like, for the first time in a while, they have like these offensive guys, this little quote unquote core of guys that are like producing, and it's like exciting. You have De La Cruz in there. And it's fun. And so, I hope those guys continue to do well. And what I will be looking out for very deeply tomorrow is Trevor Rogers. His last start, the velo was down significantly, by his standards. So I want to make sure he comes back healthy, and he goes some length, man. Let him go 80, 85 pitches, 90, and hopefully he goes more than 4 or 5 innings. But that's what I'll be looking at for sure. It should be a fun series. It should be a fun season the rest of the way.
He's got something I want to mention with De La Cruz.
Yeah, go ahead.
We expected this guy to we were talking about this off stream, on stream. Like, we were expecting this guy to all of a sudden be batting like 210, 260 or something like that. I mean, it just hasn't happened. And I think it just little by little, this guy just starts convincing at least me that this guy really does deserve a shot at starting on opening day, or maybe even putting his name on pen. I'm not like that yet, but man, it's getting real close. If this guy keeps hitting this consistently, he might as well just be considered a starter, and then you just look for that center fielder. And he's been pretty solid at center field. He had a nice little play on Saturday in that Pittsburgh game, nice diving catch, which I think could have prevented some pretty bad stuff happening in that game.
I think you're looking at it, and you're looking at. I think we all know Eli's options, and really high on the kid. Lehman is probably locked in. As Miggy, that's pretty obvious. And then what else? That's kind of what you're looking at. You got catcher, you got third base. I think we all assume Ryan Anderson will be back there, but we don't know what can happen with if the Marlins decide to go in a different direction, if they decide to go off the radar and make an acquisition at third base, something like that. But on Rogers, Isaac, he's got 3 starts left. And I think he's out of the National League Rookie of the Year running at this point. But you just want to see him finish strong. You want to see some of that early season Trevor in these next 3 starts. I agree with you. I'd really like to see him put a nice start together. Eli,
yeah, I don't know if he's totally out of it yet. Just if you look at his overall numbers, I mean, they're
great. They're still good.
They're eye-popping. And let's say someone wasn't zeroed in on the Marlins the last 2 months. You look at India's slash line. You look at Rogers' slash line. Maybe you give it to Rogers. He's a starting pitcher, and the Reds, maybe he gets it because the Reds are the better team by a lot. But it should be really exciting. I hope Trevor does really well tomorrow.
The Reds are the better team, but Rogers didn't make the All-Star game. So I mean, it doesn't mean
he didn't make the All-Star game.
It's something that India made it.
India didn't make it. You said.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, Rogers made it. India didn't, but doesn't.
And he has more Rookie of the Months than India, so by 1.
Yeah.
Eli, your prediction for
sweet.
This week's series. All right.
Sweet.
All right.
I think it was the preseason over under on Marlins wins was like 71 or 70 and a half. And at the very least, they need to take that down to the wire. The only way they're going to make up ground is by beating up on the Nationals. They are in terrible shape every step of the way. Like, this team disappoints me. They never have that consistent stretch. That hot streak, but this is their last chance, to at least get close to that number by the end of the year. And the Nationals they're in really terrible shape, man. I mean, that stat I saw earlier about Juan Soto having the best hot streak of his career, and yet it's been the worst 60 game stretch the Nationals have had since relocating. It just it says everything about it, that no matter who they have in the middle of the order, every other part of the roster is garbage. So Marlins sweep.
When you speak about the Nationals, actually, that's maybe something we discussed on Unfiltered, the worst future for any major league team, and I have a suspicion that the Nationals might be mentioned.
It's pretty ugly there, and
yeah,
13. You mentioned it, Eli. 13 games left, and then after these 3 with Washington, it's 3 with Tampa Bay, 4 with New York, 3 with Philadelphia. So those are 3 good teams that you're running into, and you need 7 wins in those 13 games to get to 70 wins. And that's something that I want to see, because again, I said before the year 70 to 75, and it was really ugly. And if they somehow end up at 70 wins, all of a sudden it really isn't as bad as it looked, although it was pretty bad. Alex Carver, your prediction for this series?
Man, I got a couple choices of who I'm going to go with here, but I think I'm going to go with Isaac and say they win 1 game. I'm really interested tonight to see how Peyton Henry handles Jesus Luzardo. I think that's an interesting choice to go with Luzardo, or to go with Henry catching this struggling starter. Really hasn't been fantastic. So I'm excited to see how he handles him, because as we stated before, I'm not really sold on his future as a catcher. Maybe he gets moved to another position, like I said, but we'll see how he handles him tonight. I'm excited to see that. I think they'll lose tonight. I think they'll win the Trevor start, and Isaac said it, just Gray's nasty, so I think they'll lose that game as well. So yeah, they get 1 out of 3, and just end the season already. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna just say fuck it. I'm gonna go Leroy Jenkins here and say the Marlins sweep. I'm gonna go ahead with Eli. This Nationals team is really lowly. They are really bad, and I know the Marlins just only took 1-3 from the Pirates, but they seem to just kind of bounce back and forth. And I think they'll beat up on the Nats. They beat up on them pretty good last time they played them, and I think they'll beat on them at home. pretty good pitching matchup advantages. I like what Eliezer brings. Like what I think Rogers has a good start, and certainly interested to see how Luzardo, after 3 good starts in a row, bounces back from a rough one last time out tonight. So the game is already underway. We hope you enjoy the series, and we hope you enjoy your week. We will talk to you guys on Friday for the series with the Rays. Go Fish.